Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. We will be getting started in 2 minutes. Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. We are ready to begin. Today's webinar is eligible for 1 contact hour. Sigma Theta Tau International Honor Society of Nursing is accredited as a provider of continuing nursing education by the American Nurses Credentialing Center's Commission on Accreditation. The speakers and planning committee members have disclosed no conflict of interest. To receive contact hours for this CNE session, participants are required to attend the webinar and complete the evaluation form, which will be emailed to all attendees. This webinar is being recorded and will be available via the Sigma repository within a few business days. Following the presentation, we will have time for a question and answer session. You'll see on your GoToWebinar control panel that you can send a message through the questions feature. This is where you can type in any question you'd like to pose to the presenters. We would like to thank Sigma and the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments for today's collaborative webinar. We would also like to thank our speakers for sharing their expertise with us today. Our speakers are Kara Cook and Katie Huffling. Kara Cook is the Climate and Health Program Manager for the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments. Her work focuses on elevating climate and health as a national priority by engaging nursing organizations and individual nurses in climate and health advocacy, education, and practice change. She has experience in critical care and public health nursing. Kara holds a master's degree in public health nursing from the University of Maryland. Katie Huffling is a certified nurse midwife and the executive director of the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments. With Annie, Katie works with nurses and nursing organizations to elevate environmental health issues such as climate change, toxic chemicals, and sustainability in healthcare amongst the nursing profession. Now let's go ahead and get started with today's presentation.
Thank you, Erica. And this is Katie Huffling, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to Sigma for inviting us here today. And we're so excited to share Nurses Drawdown with your members. These are our objectives for today. We'll be going over the 5 areas of action in Nurses Drawdown. We're going to provide some case studies of nurses who are already taking action to address climate change and describe how you can take part in these activities within the Nurses Drawdown community. Climate change is one of the biggest public health threats we currently face, but it's also one of the biggest opportunities. When we address climate change, we can have an amazing impact on health globally and the health of future generations. And now more than ever, nurses are in the public eye and are being recognized for our leadership, compassion, and excellence in supporting health. We are perfectly poised to help lead the charge in addressing climate change. As the largest portion of the healthcare workforce and the most trusted profession, our voices and actions matter. And nurses are solutions people, and we know how to get things done. As we highlight with Nurses Drawdown, there are solutions to climate change, but we need all hands on deck. We know that our planetary vital signs are showing a planet in distress. We are faced not only with climate change, but also with declining biodiversity, loss of tropical rainforests, lack of fresh water, and increasing frequency of natural disasters like wildfires and hurricanes. Changes to our natural life support systems are already impacting our health and the health of those we serve. These ecosystem transformations are projected to drive the majority of the global burden of disease over the coming century, impacting the most vulnerable and the future generations the hardest. We as nurses, with our holistic approach to health, recognize that everything is connected. The health of the planet impacts the health of the people. And now we know we have no time to waste. Climate scientists have been saying that in order to mitigate the worst effects of climate change, we need to keep the average global temperature increase below 2 degrees centigrade. However, an extensive review of climate change research released in 2019 by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change found that there's significant differences in environmental impacts and the resultant health impacts if we're able to keep that average temperature change below 1.5 degrees Celsius. And we need to accomplish this within the next 10 years. For example, if we're able to keep the temperature change below 1.5 degrees Celsius, half the number of people globally will experience water scarcity. And instead of 37% of the world's population being regularly exposed to severe heat waves, we'll be able to cut that by more than half to 14%. And with COVID-19, we are seeing this multi-system failure play out in an unprecedented fashion. We do not currently have evidence that climate change has an impact on the spread of COVID-19. However, climate change is in part responsible for the factors that make the likelihood of a pandemic increase. As the global temperature increases, where animals live and thrive is changing. With these changing habitats, animals are now coming into contact with humans in ways they haven't before, creating an opportunity for pathogens to get into new hosts. Also, in a recent research out of Harvard Chan School of Public Health, the researchers found that people who live in areas with poor air quality were more likely to die of COVID-19, even when taking into account other risk factors, such as pre-existing medical conditions, socioeconomic status, and access to health care. As global temperatures increase, many parts of the world are experiencing worsening air quality days and more days where the air is unsafe for even healthy adults. So we can have a significant positive impact on outcomes to COVID-19 if we're able to reduce these air pollutants. In May, nurses joined with other health professionals around the world, calling on our leaders to support a healthy recovery. In support of the letter sent to G20 leaders, nurses also came together in this video shown here to describe why nurses support a healthy recovery. We said in part, health professionals stand united in support of a pragmatic, science-based approach to managing the COVID-19 pandemic. In that same spirit, we also stand united in support of a healthy recovery from this crisis. We have witnessed firsthand how fragile communities can be when their health, food security, and freedom to work are interrupted by a common threat. The layers of this ongoing tragedy are many and magnified by inequality and underinvestment in public health systems. We have witnessed death, disease, and mental distress at levels not seen for decades. These effects could have been partially mitigated or even possibly prevented by adequate investments in pandemic preparedness, public health, and environmental stewardship. We must learn from these mistakes and come back stronger, healthier, and more resilient. And with Nurses Drawdown, we have the tools and solutions that can help us come back stronger, healthier, and more resilient. So I hope with today's presentation, you are inspired to join us. And the time is now. While we knew 2020 would be a big year for nurses with the 200th anniversary of Florence Nightingale's birth and 2020 being designated as the year of the nurse and midwife, none of us could have been prepared for how the public esteem of nurses has exponentially increased as we are being recognized for our vital work. And now more than ever, we need to harness this energy and the support of nurses into climate solutions. So what can we do? Nurses have always known that the best way to prevent needless suffering and death is through strong and effective public and population health. We therefore plan to do all we can to minimize the chance of future pandemics. That means we need to protect the health of the planet in order to protect the health of humanity. Even in the midst of a global pandemic, nurses are dedicated to building a healthier future. And with Nurses Drawdown, we can work together for that future. The science is clear that the climate crisis poses one of the greatest risks to health that humanity has ever faced. And the time is now to act if we are to avoid the most catastrophic impacts. Fortunately, the science is also clear that there are actions we can take to effectively draw down the level of greenhouse gases in our environment. Nurses Drawdown is based on the science of Project Drawdown. Founded in 2014, Project Drawdown is a nonprofit organization that seeks to help the world reach drawdown. This is the future point in time when levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere stop climbing and start to steadily decline. They are a leading resource for information and insight about evidence-based climate solutions. Project Drawdown breaks down the solutions into 9 different categories shown here and are able to quantify the amount of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases that will be drawn down out of the atmosphere if we take measures globally to support these solutions. With Nurses Drawdown and our planning committee, we decided to focus on 5 key areas of action that my colleague Kara Cook will be discussing in detail. These action areas were chosen because of their significant connection to human health. They are energy, supporting a clean energy future by promoting energy efficiency and advocating for a transition to renewable energy. The second is food, committing to a plant-based diet, use of clean cook stoves, and reduced food waste. The third is mobility, supporting improved bike infrastructure, walkable cities, and mass transit. The fourth is gender equity, educating girls and access to family planning. And finally, nature-based solutions, planting trees, protecting tropical forests, and forest protection. The Nurses Drawdown Project is a project of the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments and Project Drawdown. The Alliance is a leading organization working at the intersection of health and the environment, so it is a natural fit for this partnership. We have to say thank you to Teddy Potter, clinical professor and coordinator of the Doctor of Nursing Practice in Health Innovation and Leadership Program, and Director of Planetary Health at the University of Minnesota for making this partnership possible. She recognized the value of a solutions-oriented approach to engage on climate change and planetary health, and was able to bring the 2 organizations together in this great partnership. I'd also like to say thank you to the Nurses Drawdown Planning Committee for all of their hard work over the past 9 months. This project was truly a labor of love, and their breadth of knowledge and dedication to engaging nurses on climate solutions was truly amazing. So why nurses? I think it's important to note that addressing climate change and other environmental issues is a core part of nursing practice. It's in the American Nurses Association Code of Ethics that nurses need to fight for social justice, and this is perfectly in line with addressing climate change. At the heart of nursing is the understanding that when we create the right environment, we can heal ourselves. As the most numerous and most trusted health profession in the world, nurses can co-create a healthier future for all by embracing the actions of Nurses Drawdown. And since the earliest days of professional nursing, nurses have understood that optimal health requires good nutrition, adequate mobility, a healthy environment, social support. And fighting for social and environmental justice is also an important component of health for all. We wanted to highlight a few of our nursing pioneers and hope that through Nurses Drawdown, you'll be inspired to work just like they did on solutions to climate change. From Florence Nightingale in the bottom left-hand corner here, who recognized that clean air, clean water, and a clean environment promoted healing, to Mary Seacole right above her, at the top of the page. She was a British Jamaican nurse who also cared for British soldiers during the Crimean War and who fought against racial prejudice. Right below her is Susie Walking Bear Yellowtail. She was one of the first Native Americans to graduate as a registered nurse in the United States and was a fierce advocate for better health care for Native Americans. One of her friends described Susie, when she talked, people, both Indian and non-Indian, listened. Why? Because this woman spoke with experience, knowledge, and conviction about the poor health conditions of the Indians and how to make the Indian healthy and strong once again. I feel like that type of voice is so particular for nursing and is such a strength for nurses. And I hope that all of you today will be inspired to use your nursing voice in a similar way in support of climate solutions. Next is Luther Kreisman. He faced extensive discrimination and was denied access to several nursing programs due to his gender. Throughout his career, he advocated for gender and racial diversity in nursing. In the upper right hand, we have Mary Elizabeth Mahoney, who was the first African American to study and work as a professionally trained nurse in the United States. She was also a champion of women's rights, and after the 19th Amendment passed, giving women the right to vote, she was one of the first women to register to vote in Boston, Massachusetts. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, we have Ildera Murillo Rode, a nurse originally from Panama who emigrated to the United States. She founded the National Association of Hispanic Nurses in 1975 after being concerned that the American Nurses Association was not meeting the needs of the Latino nurses. She had a strong focus on education and community service. I am so proud to be a part of the nursing profession and follow in the footsteps of these amazing women and men. They recognize the power of nurses, and with Nurses Drawdown, we are hoping to harness this amazing power. Through commitment to nursing drawdown actions, we recognize that nurses will improve the health of individuals and communities while also taking steps to heal the planet. Now I'm going to turn this over to Kara, and she's going to go through the 5 ways that all of you can take action on climate solutions.
Thank you so much, Katie, for that great introduction to why the time is now to be addressing climate change, why nurses are well poised to be doing that, and an introduction to the story of Nurses Drawdown and how you all can take action. So over my next few slides, I'm going to delve deeper into the 5 key action areas and provide some specific examples of what you can do, as well as case studies of nurses who are taking action in these 5 key areas. And as Katie explained, Nurses Drawdown couples the science-based climate solutions from Project Drawdown with the power of nurses around the world to push for change. And while there are a number of solutions in Nurses Drawdown, in Project Drawdown, Nurses Drawdown includes has taken 5 key areas which we think we have found to be most pertinent to nurses. And the reasoning behind choosing these 5 key areas includes a variety of reasons. One, as Katie mentioned, because these areas, human health and health of the planet, is core to the solution. But we also chose these 5 key areas because they're representative of the wide variety of settings in which nurses practice, are accessible to nurses around the world. They encompass actions that can be taken personally, organizationally, or even institutionally, as well as collectively. And then lastly, they incorporate high impact actions to draw down carbon emissions and really have a significant impact on addressing climate change. And what Nurses Drawdown intends to do is engage both nurses already taking action to combat climate change, as well as those who are just starting out and really trying to find a way to get more involved. So on the website, we pulled together suggested actions in each key area, incorporating differing levels of action, ranging from a simple action that could be taken, in your personal life or at home, to larger actions that are moving more organizations or collective action on climate change. And so we've done this so nurses can figure out what works best for them and start where they're at. And so I'm going to review the 5 key areas here, which again are food, mobility, gender equity, energy, and nature. So climate change, as we know, creates threats to food quality and supply. But at the same time, our industrial food systems, our consumption patterns, as well as traditional cooking practices are a large contributor and driver of climate change. What the food area focuses on is promoting plant-rich diets, which both reduce emissions and also tend to be healthier, helping to reduce the risk of chronic disease. This area also focuses on reducing food waste, whether that be at the production, transportation, and storage phases of the food system, or at the retail and consumer level. The last part relates to household cook stoves. So around the world, 3 billion people cook over open fires or on rudimentary stoves that use polluting fuels such as coal, wood, or crop residues. And this contributes to poor air quality, contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, which worsen climate change, but also puts those at the home at risk of breathing in dirty air. So promoting the use of clean cook stoves is a way to not only address climate change, but also reduce air pollution and improve health. Examples of ways that nurses can take action in this area include eating less meat and more plant-rich foods in your own diet, or working with your health institution or your workplace to reduce the amount of meat served on cafeteria menus. And it's important with this that we take into account food equity and insecurity, because we still need to make sure that people have access to critical sources of protein while also transitioning to plant-based diets. Nurses can also work to reduce food waste in their own homes, in their communities or workplaces by buying less food and or doing activities such as composting. And then lastly, nurses can also advocate for the development of cleaner cooking technologies and better access to these technologies for people around the world. And so this picture is showing Jessica Madrid, who is a nurse in British Columbia, Canada, and she's also the president of the Canadian Association of Nurses for the Environment. And she's working with the Nurses Climate Challenge team to develop Canada-specific resources that provide education for nurses and other health professionals on how they can reduce their climate footprint by taking actions such as reducing meat consumption, encouraging compost, among other actions to reduce emissions. In addition, another example, which is featured on the Nurses Drawdown website, comes from nurses at Providence St. Patrick Hospital in Montana in the United States. And those nurses at their healthcare facility are working with chefs and food service employees to incorporate more plant-based items into hospital menus. The second area is mobility. Transportation is consistently ranked as one of the highest contributors of carbon dioxide emissions in the world. Therefore, the way people move around is a really important solution to addressing climate change. So supporting walkable communities, improved bike infrastructure, as well as access to public transit helps to reduce the need for fossil fuel driven transportation, such as gas powered personal vehicles. Examples of ways nurses can take action in this area range from walking, biking, or taking public transit more, to encouraging your workplaces to incentivize employees to carpool or take public transit or bike to work. And then lastly, work to advocate for infrastructure updates in your community that help support active public transit. And this picture here is showing Tucker Annis, who is a nurse informaticist in Minnesota in the United States. And he is making the commitment to increase his use of biking and public transit for his commute to work, which he explains is saving him money as well as having a significant reduction in his carbon footprint. The third action area is gender equity. And this area focuses on how nurses can make an impact by striving to provide access to voluntary family planning services for both men and women, and increasing access to education for women and girls to promote female empowerment, as well as success and autonomy at a young age that carries to later in life. And then lastly, this area focuses on promoting the ability of individuals and families to make choices regarding the number of children and spacing and timings of birth. Actions in this area include including men and family planning, promoting access to contraceptives and family planning education, as well as providing access to menstrual products, which allows girls to be able to stay in school. And on this slide, there's a few examples of different organizations that are promoting efforts that fall under the gender equity action area. So AfriPads is an example of an organization that is supplying reusable sanitary pads to women and girls in Africa. The organization Nurses for Sexual and Reproductive Health is an organization that mainly focuses on providing students, nurses, and midwives with education and resources to become skilled providers and social change agents around sexual and reproductive health and justice. And then the third example is the Native Youth and Sexual Health Network, which is an organization that works with Indigenous peoples across the United States and Canada. In there, they focus on advocacy for comprehensive and culturally safe reproductive health, rights, and justice initiatives in communities. The next focus area is energy, and currently the burning of fossil fuels for power production contributes about 25% of greenhouse gas emissions globally. And so the energy action area encourages nurses to reduce their individual consumption of fossil fuel power while also advocating for green energy solutions in all sectors and a just transition away from fossil fuels to clean and renewable energy sources. Actions that nurses can take in this area include using renewable energy like wind and solar in your home, or advocating for your workplace to use more sources of renewable energy. And in addition to using renewable energy sources, this also includes reducing energy use, whether that be in your own home, encouraging your community members to do so, as well as in your hospital facility or in your workplace. And so this image is of Dr. Ruth McDermott Levy, who is a public health nurse, and she's also the 2020 winner of the Charlotte Brody Award, which is an award that's given out by the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments and Healthcare Without Harm. And it's given yearly to a nurse who demonstrates excellence in environmental health. And she's the winner for this year's award. So I wanted to showcase her because she's doing such amazing work as an advocate for regulations in the state of Pennsylvania in the United States that aim to reduce emissions from the oil and gas industry, as well as provide health protections for communities living in heavy fracking areas. Another example is a nurse, Dr. Beth Schenk, who is the sustainability director of environmental stewardship at a health system in Montana in the United States. And she has been a driving force behind getting the health system she works for to make a new commitment to be carbon negative by 2030. And mainly by focusing on energy efficiency, promoting more renewable energy sources, reducing waste in their facility, and many more solutions. And the fifth action area is nature-based solutions. Trees and land usage have one of the biggest impacts on climate change. And the beauty of trees is they act as carbon sinks, which they pull carbon emissions out of the atmosphere. So they're a really important climate solution. And what this action area focuses on is planting and protecting trees, as well as promoting biodiversity and healthy forests. Actions in this area that nurses could take include planting more trees, whether that be where you live or in your community that you live in. Nurses can also take action in this area by reducing the use of paper products, composting, and recycling paper, which all help to reduce the demand for cutting down trees. Nurses can also support organizations that help plant trees and conserve existing forests. And the Nurses Drawdown website provides some of those organizations that you can help support that are doing that work. And this picture on this slide is Christiana Jegede, who is a nurse in Ibadan, Nigeria. She co-founded the Gals Act Green, which is an organization that is focused on educating nurses and nursing students in Nigeria about climate change, and as well as promoting actions such as garden plantings, planting trees, and reducing plastic pollution. So when thinking about addressing challenges such as climate change, it can seem sometimes overwhelming, and oftentimes nurses aren't sure how to get started. And so that's really what Nurses Drawdown aims to do. Nurses Drawdown aims to connect nurses around the world taking action in their lives, communities, and workplaces, as well as to provide examples and stories of how you as a nurse can get involved. And so we are encouraging nurses to share your stories, your videos, and actions on social media to help inspire other nurses to take action. And we have already some great videos up on the website, which you can take a look at. And then I also want to share this video that we pulled together for the launch of Nurses Drawdown, which was launched on Friday of last week. And so I'd like to share this video with you all about how nurses around the world have joined Nurses Drawdown and how they are committing to action.
Hello, my name is Omotaya Detunji.
My name is Andrew Jensen.
My name is Annabelle Castro-Thompson,
and I have joined the Nurses Drawdown movement.
Well, we are learning more about the health risks associated with climate change. It is not always clear what we, as nurses, can do.
Nurses Drawdown is here to help. Created by nurses, for nurses, it identifies evidence-based actions we can take in order to curb climate change.
As a global community, we experience many challenges that threaten human health and well-being around the world.
From the COVID-19 pandemic to climate change, these challenges require a professional, personal, social, and global response.
Climate change driven by fossil fuels threatens our health, the health of our patients, and the people, places, and communities that we love.
Wildfires, droughts, and floods are increasing. Air quality is threatened. Heat-related illnesses are rising. Food insecurity places people across the world at risk.
The COVID-19 pandemic has laid bare how the status quo creates care gaps and neglects many people.
We can no longer continue with business as usual. We must create new realities that push us to do better.
The health of our planet depends on the health and well-being of all living beings.
But there is hope. There is hope for planet Earth. We have the opportunity to create a healthier future for us all.
Together we can tackle monumental challenges such as climate change. The time is now.
The time is now.
The time is now.
And nurses stand ready to respond, lead and role model solutions. We have joined Nurses Drawdown and have committed to take action.
I'm going to reduce my intake and transition to a completely plant-based diet.
The action that I've committed to taking is setting up Earth Nurse. Earth Nurse is an international NGO that is a home for nurses who are concerned about the climate but have really no idea where to go next.
Myself and a few of my colleagues back here in Nigeria are committed to building a wide network of climate literate Nigerian nurses and nursing students who are poised to act as change agents, influencing the disposition of the general public towards climate change and environmental health.
I have made the commitment to ensure that there is equity, diversity, and inclusion in my workplace.
I have significantly stopped using my car and committed to walking, biking, and using public transportation now more than ever.
I invite you to join us in the Nurses Drawdown movement by taking action. Use your trusted voice to help launch and advance a worldwide movement of nurses who are leading efforts to address climate change in their workplaces and communities.
We have the knowledge, skills, abilities, and tools to reduce emissions and create a healthy future for all.
Join us in protecting the health of humanity by protecting the health of the planet.
So I hope that that video inspires you all to want to get more involved, and gives you kind of a nice little snapshot of how nurses are taking action around the world. And we feel it's really important to be able to exemplify the work that nurses are doing, not only to be able to highlight nurses and their role in addressing climate change, but to be able to inspire others to want to take action and get involved. And as you can tell by the actions presented in that video, there's some that I mentioned, as well as some that nurses are taking initiative on their own. And we really want to be able to highlight those incredible stories and build this almost global digital community showcasing the work of nurses. And so how can you get involved? We encourage you to join Nurses Drawdown and commit to taking action. And you could do that at nursesdrawdown.org. And particularly relevant in kind of the midst of this pandemic, we're really trying to build kind of a digital movement. And so we encourage you to follow us on social media and share your stories. I included the Nurses Drawdown social media platforms that we have, and we encourage you to post your videos and pictures using the hashtag Nurses Drawdown. And then lastly, while Katie and I are presenting Nurses Drawdown to you today, we are not the only two on this team. The consumption and launch of Nurses Drawdown has truly been a team effort of nurses around the world. And we'd like to thank the Nurses Drawdown Planning Committee, and you can find the names of those on the Planning Committee on the website. And we'd also like to thank the nursing organizational partners that are involved with this effort. And so to help kind of gauge where you all are at after hearing this content, we'd like to do a quick poll. And so we're going to ask you, so you've heard about the 5 areas of action in Nurses Drawdown. What 2 areas do you think, do you want to commit to taking action on first? We'll give you a couple minutes to select your options. Wow, so it looks like number 1 response is food, and then nature-based solutions is a second, and then kind of an equal distribution among energy, gender equity, and mobility. This is really amazing, and it's great to see that you already are inspired to get involved with Nurses Drawdown. So we're very thrilled to hear that. And with that, I believe we're going to turn it over to the Q&A.
Thank you. Let's keep those questions coming. What about growing food at home? Can that count as part of a food action?
Definitely. There's so many positive benefits of growing food at home. You know where your food came from. You don't need to, there's no transportation involved. Excuse me. And the more planting that we can do at home, you have so many climate benefits from having that extra green space at your house. Did you want to add anything else to that, Kara?
And I would just say sometimes people don't necessarily have a yard, or maybe you live in a big city and you or apartment building and you don't have access to a yard. And there's a lot of really great initiatives in different areas that are doing community gardening, which allows you to have a plot to plant your own fruits and vegetables, as well as engage with your community members that are also doing the same.
There are 5 key areas for Nurses Drawdown. If I am unable to perform all 5 key areas on my own or within my organization, can I still join the Nurses Drawdown?
Of course, we would love to have you join no matter what you can do. We're hoping that no matter, if you need to start really small, that's awesome. You're taking that first step. So whether it's committing to not eating meat one day a week, to taking your bike every day to work, or even something bigger where you want to work on policy with, governmental agencies, like wherever you are, that's where we want you to start, and then hope you can build upon that. I think we want you to have a success and have this be something really positive and empowering for you. So don't worry if you can't do all 5 areas. That's totally fine. We're not expecting that of you.
How can we get nursing students involved on our campuses?
That's a great question. The National Student Nurses Association was on the planning committee for Nurses Drawdown. So they're a great resource to connect with the nursing chapters and their student members. And that's a way to reach out to some of the local chapters if you'd like to organize on a campus. And then also, I'm not sure if this is a student asking this or if this is a faculty member who wants to educate more students, but for faculty members, you can think about incorporating some of this information into the courses that you're teaching, which is a great way to educate student nurses and get them prepared to be able to address these issues when they actually enter nursing practice.
And I would just add, Kara, if you wanted to tell them about the project that our student group is working on around composting, because it just shows the level of interest that nursing students have around some of these actions.
Yes, and you might have noticed a couple of, there's Liz Flores and Andrew Jensen, who are both featured in that video you just watched. They're working on a really awesome project with a couple of other members of the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments Student Committee, and they're working on developing education around composting that they can share with nursing students and nurses in a way that is quick and easy to use, but helps people get started if they want to actually start to compost, whether that be at home or in a healthcare facility.
And to give another example of how ways that nurses can be engaging their colleagues around this, Beth Schenk that Karen talked about in her section of the presentation, at the hospital that she's based at, Providence St. Patrick's Hospital in Missoula, Montana, their green team has been producing every month. They've taken one of the 5 actions, and they're producing a newsletter on actions that nurses can take, as well as a short video to kind of encourage engagement of the nurses at that healthcare facility and expand their education on ways that they can engage.
Do you think it would be helpful to form committees at our institutions under the name Nurses Drawdown to come up with institutional solutions? Is this something we are able to do?
That would be amazing. And all these resources are available for you. And, you know, if you did do something like that, please share with us, because we want to be able to share on the website and social media. I think it's so important for all of us just to share what works, what doesn't work. And it's just so inspiring when you see other nurses engaging in this. I know for me, when I see other nurses doing these things, I was like, oh, wow, I can do it too. Like, if they're able to do it, yeah.
Can you speak to the difference between Annie and Nurses Drawdown?
Yeah, the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments is a nonprofit organization working with nurses, and then this is just a project of the Alliance. So we're kind of like handling the funding for it. So Nurses Drawdown is a little separate from the Alliance, but it's supported by the Alliance and Project Drawdown.
And I'll just add to that, while it is a project of the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments, we did want to ensure that it was a global movement of nurses, and that's why we are asking nursing organizations to join as organizational partners, because we recognize that as an organization that works a lot in the United States, we may not have the knowledge that nurses in other countries do, and we want to make sure that that voice is amplified as well. And so that's what our organizational partners help to do, as well as just an individual nurse from around another country other than the United States, and sharing their story and how they're taking action.
And and just to add on to that, if any of you are members of Sigma chapters or other nursing organizations that weren't listed as partners, there's no cost for organizations to become a partner, and we provide lots of great resources. So if your organization might be interested in joining as a partner, get in touch with Kara or I, and we can help get that moving along.
What is something a nurse can do in their workplace to make an impact?
There's a lot. So depending on where you work, if you work in a healthcare facility or a hospital, one of the best resources to learn more about the specific actions, in addition to looking, we include a link on the Nurses Drawdown website, but you can check out Healthcare Without Harm. They have really been a leader in healthcare sustainability, and they have not chapters, but they have offices all over the world. And so they have a lot of experience working with different facilities. And they have some excellent resources around, the food action area, which includes their initiative, Less Meat, Better Meat, which is changing food menus to serve less meat and providing more plant-based options, as well as, how hospitals can start to change their sourcing practices and buy more local foods and support some of the farmers in the area. And then they also have a ton of resources around energy reduction, transitioning to renewable energies, and ton on waste reduction, which isn't necessarily a Nurses Drawdown action area, but we aren't asking you to just stay limited to that. We're just trying to provide something that's a bit more digestible to get you started.
Does Nurses Drawdown have a way for people to donate to tree planting and reforestation?
Yeah, actually, in the Nature-Based Solutions action page, there's a couple links to different groups that are doing tree planting. And you can also, if you just Google, tree planting, and then whatever part of the world that you're in, there's so many different organizations doing these types of activities. It's a really great way to get involved and have that direct impact.
How do we get kids involved? And then do you have any resources for children to understand how they can take action and learn?
Well, actually, on the website, on the Nature-Based Solutions page, there is a link to an organization that works with children around educating them on why tree planting is important, and they do activities with kids around the world. So there's a link there. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the organization's name. Um, there's also opportunities with a lot of these children's organizations, such as the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, and then their international counterparts that have different climate badges and different ways that children can be engaged in climate solutions. And I have to say, just with working with the student nurses, I think they are so interested, so driven. They really want to engage because it's their future that's going to be most impacted. So they really, I think they're really dedicated about wanting to address climate change and very motivated.
I'm working in the solar industry and not in a clinical setting. How can I educate more people to participate in these lifestyle changes other than posting on social media?
That's a good question. So I think it kind of starts in, if you're looking to work with more nurses, I think drawing the connection between what the health benefits are, and kind of sharing how, a workplace or a healthcare facility or a community or even just an individual can, do solar energy, at varying levels. I think that's a good place to start. I don't know if Katie, you have more thoughts on that.
A couple of things come to mind. There's a fair amount of research that shows that a lot of people don't talk to their friends and family about climate change. And so I think just starting that conversation, and I think it can be in a really non-confrontational way, because I know some people feel like climate change, depending on where you live, can be political. But I think talking about the health impacts as a nurse and why you're supportive of these different activities and the positive health impacts from them, I think is really compelling. Also, if you belong to any nursing organizations, most conferences right now are virtual, but there's still opportunities. I think Nurses Drawdown provides such a really nice menu of items. You could easily do a poster or a short presentation to your local chapter of your nursing organization or state level conferences. I think that getting the word out there among the general nursing population, I think that presenting at different events is a really great way to get that word out.
Mm-hmm.
How can Drawdown bring nurses together in common cause across the globe?
Well, when we were looking at the 5 action areas, we really tried to find pieces that we felt like across the globe, nurses would find them compelling and really make that health connection. So we're hoping that across the globe, nurses will start to be doing these different actions, and it may vary a little bit depending on where a particular nurse lives. And then if you come up with other actions, we want to hear about them, because what we've put on the website is kind of our beginning ideas, but we want to hear from all of you about, if you get really interested in doing some of these food activities and you come up with something totally original or something that we haven't listed there, we would love to hear about it so we can all learn from one another. And I think that potential from learning together and from each other has such strong promise for really creating this global movement of nurses.
And we're hoping to take some of those suggestions that you all put forth about the creative ways that you're approaching the Nurses Drawdown action areas. And we will be in sending out, newsletters around the key areas, highlighting the nurses that are taking action in those newsletters, and then providing a bit more detailed information about actions beyond what's posted on the website. And that was really intentional because we didn't want, we know sometimes when people talk about climate change, they try to throw everything at you and give you a huge list of things you can do. And while that's really awesome, it can be extremely overwhelming. And that's kind of what we were trying to avoid. We wanted to give, a great way for nurses to kind of just step in and start thinking about what they could do with, a simple menu of options. And then we're hoping to continue to engage with you all, over the coming months and years, to really kind of highlight the breadth of the nursing community and what's happening around addressing climate change.
Do you happen to have a toolkit that we can use locally in our own nursing communities?
I would say the closest that we have to a toolkit would be the Take Action page, which lists a bunch of different ways that you can take action, and lots of web resources. It's kind of a mini toolkit, I would say.
Are there any thoughts on marrying the Nurses Drawdown campaign to the Nurses Climate Challenge?
So I would say that they are very complementary to each other, and they both do different things. And so I think that with the Nurses Climate Challenge, and for those of you that aren't familiar, it's a campaign to educate health professionals around climate and health. And we have the website you can go to is nursesclimatechallenge.org. And what nurses do is you sign up and register to be a nurse climate champion. And once you do that, you have access to a variety of resources that you can use to educate your health professional colleagues on climate change and health. And we encourage you all to check those out and use them to hold presentations or educational sessions where you work, or with your health professional colleagues, so that they can get a better understanding of what climate change is and how health is impacted. And then there's also some sample actions on how nurses and health professionals can get involved. And so I think that's a very kind of introductory starting point. And what Nurses Drawdown does is we're kind of going right to the action items, So I think starting with the Nurses Climate Challenge, if you'd like to educate people more about the climate and health background, and then pulling in Nurses Drawdown as, okay, so you know more, and here's all the actions you can take. So they're very complementary, and we encourage you to get involved with both.
Does Nurses Drawdown have any guidance on how to reduce medical waste?
We do not. The two resources that I would recommend is the Healthcare Without Harm website that Kara recommended, and also Global Green and Healthy Hospitals, which also has a global perspective, and they have lots of case studies of hospitals and other healthcare institutions that are being leaders in that area. We didn't, as Kara said, we didn't want things to be so overwhelming and so many different topic areas. So we did have to make some tough decisions on which pieces we wanted to focus on initially. So that's why healthcare waste is not in that initial group of action items, but it's not because it's not an important piece. It's just, we felt like we focus on a few key areas, and then we can expand from there.
If we want our organizations to get on board with the Nurses Drawdown, where is the best place to start? How do we effectively advocate for this?
So you can, if you already know your nursing organization is on board and they want to become a partner, we do have a spot on the website where you can, the organization can sign up to become a partner, and then we'll put them on the website with the logo, including a link to their website. But sometimes you have to do a little bit of coaxing with your organization. You have to kind of talk with them about why it's important, why it matters for nurses, and why you think they should become involved with Nurses Drawdown. And so if you're not in leadership within that nursing organization, one of the first steps you could do is approach leadership about it. And many of the nursing organizations will have board meetings or meetings throughout the year in which the leadership comes together to discuss upcoming priorities and whatnot. and getting a conversation on the agenda is a great place to start in starting that discussion about the organizational involvement.
Thank you so much to our presenters today for all this great information. Sigma is grateful that you took the time to share with this audience and look forward to hearing more from you in the future. As a reminder to our attendees, please submit the state or country you are from in the questions feature. Be sure to hit send so the message makes it to us. We hope you enjoyed this webinar. Be sure to check out Sigma's upcoming webinars, podcasts, and resources to support you and your colleagues at sigmanursing.org. Also, previously recorded webinars and podcasts are freely available on the repository. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day.